Excellent. And we are live. Good afternoon, PDOCS group. Anybody watching in the group, please comment live or hashtag replay below. And really quickly, before I get into an introduction, I just want to talk about a quick little giveaway. Give me 1 second, guys, because I have a couple people that join live in the waiting room here. Let me just admit them before I dive into the curriculum and the lesson. Perfect. And I'll just keep an eye on that as we go. But real quick, before I get into it, I just want to kind of to preface by talking about something that Jed is giving to anybody who's watching either here live or that happens to see the replay. If you just comment below, just comment the word focus below if you want this document. This is something Jedediah put together specifically for anybody watching this live stream. This has a lot to do with what we're going to cover today, his expertise, the method he stumbled across, all the people that he's helped, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But more importantly, he put together a very kind of influential document that's going to help people apply what we actually talk about and give them the frameworks behind that. So I'm not here to read you an 11-page doc. You can see as I'm scrolling down, there's lots of great information and resources in here. So I'll cover that again, but I just wanted to kind of let you guys know from the top that Jed put this together for all of us here watching today. So thank you very much for that. And if anybody wants that, whether watching here live, the replay in this Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, wherever this stuff gets published, just comment focus and somebody from my team will be sure to get that over to you. Great. So now I'm going to go back to you and I, my friend, and let's just give a little introduction really quickly about how we met and then talk a little about your backstory and, why we decided to do this live stream together. We've been planning it for, well over a month now since we spoke, but if you could give a little context to that, that'd be great, Jed.
Yeah, so we actually got introduced by Marco Basili. He's the owner of the Renegade Circle and everything Renegade, basically. And I had heard your name before. I think you did a talk with us at some point, but I wasn't able to make the talk. So we never actually met until, like, say, a month ago. And then Marco introduced us and, we just kicked it off and here we are. So...
Good point. Good point. Yeah. So Marco was a guest on the live stream. Geez, I want to say 6 or 8 months ago. I'd have to scroll back through the post and see how long ago that was. And he and I formed a very good relationship. We're still partnered together on a couple things. He promotes a little of my stuff. I actually refer some people over to him when I have the right fits. So yeah. Marco's an excellent guy, and he has a great community of very ethical people with a very good skill set as well, which is great. So let's talk a little about your backstory, how you came to do what you're doing now, what you've done in the past, and kind of your main skill set that's going to lead into the topics we're going to discuss here.
Awesome. So there's actually kind of 2 parts to this. So one of the parts, so I'll start with the other part, which is kind of more of the personal side of it, which is that probably about 9 years ago, I got traumatized so badly that I was so gone mentally that I was staring at the wall for weeks at a time. Like I was just not there. And I tried everything for, 7 or 8 years trying to fix that. And nothing worked. I tried normal therapy, like CBT. I've tried RRT with Marissa Peer. I've tried hypnosis. I've tried pretty much everything you can think of, even the most woo-woo methodologies, and just nothing worked. So I just kind of put that on a shelf and just gave up on, trying to find an answer for it. And so during that time, I'd gotten kind of into sales. And I ended up getting good enough at sales to where I was actually coaching people. I started my own business coaching people in sales, the sales COD. And right a few months after that, I actually got hired by a really big done-for-you high-ticket sales agency, $10 million a year revenue, to be their head sales coach. So that created basically a conflict of interest. So I couldn't coach on my own while I was coaching there. So I was like, okay, well, I still want to have my own business and I still want to do coaching because I really like coaching. So I was like, hey, what other kind of coach can I be? I was like, well, I looked back and I was like, well, I have, 7 or 8 years of experience and all this different, mindset stuff and, all these woo-woo methodologies. I'm sure I can do something, right? So I kicked off on it and I didn't have any methodologies that really worked, but I felt like I could do it. And so Marco, believe it or not, was actually ended up being my first client. And we just started working together. And he's like, okay, here's my problems. What do I do? And I'm like, well, I have no clue. Let me figure it out. So in a couple of sessions, I figured out basically world-changing methodologies that had never existed before that ended up being more powerful than anything anybody had ever tried. And basically from there, I've used it on, several dozen people. That was in December of 2022. And I've everyone that's I've used it on has been like blown away by how powerful, how simple it is, and it works. So it's none of like the crazy stuff that, they cluck like a chicken, bark like a dog type of stuff with hypnosis. It's none of this, NLP crazy stuff where they like redirect you and, none of that crazy stuff, but it works and it's extremely powerful. So it's kind of like a kind of an accident, kind of providential thing. And I've been doing it since then. So.
Let me ask you a couple of questions I think people might have based off that.
Yeah.
Number one is you were doing pretty good. You stumbled across sales. You got pretty good at sales. You started coaching people and doing well. And then you got hired from a large agency as their top sales coach. And then when you had the conflict of interest and you wanted to go back into coaching for yourself, you said something like, what other kind of coach can I be? So first off, my question is, what made you shift? Why didn't you just stay being a sales coach, but do it on your own for your own private clients rather than conflicting?
Yeah, because the contract kind of had me, by the balls, basically. So it was like 12 months after I leave the agency, I can't, coach on my own. So I'm still in that time period. So, I had to do something.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Because you may or may not know, and a lot of people watching that have been following me for a while, one of my first gigs in the high ticket space was working for about a $20 million a year digital consultancy. Back in November 15th of 2019, I started that job. That was when I first left my 20 years in corporate America and working for big corporations and got into the digital space and started working for myself. So I became a 1099 employee on their high ticket sales team. We were selling a $10,000 or an $18,000 package at the time. And that's where I kind of got my first experience of how high performing sales teams really gel and they work. How to coach those guys up and get the best, what high caliber talent looks like, and people that can close those deals consistently for a company doing a consistent 8 figures and 20 million plus a year. So that was really cool. But same thing, they had some contracts that limited what you could do for the next 12 months or what have you. So I totally get where you're coming from there. Now the other thing you said is I thought that was really cool because a lot of people think you need to have everything fleshed out, but you went and Marco became your first client. What do? I don't know. Let me figure it out. Like there's nothing wrong with that. People need to understand that. You don't always need to have the exact answer because there's going to be different answers for different people. But you said you stumbled across methodologies that are more powerful than anything that exists. And it's not with all the fluff and the woo-woo stuff, right? But like methodologies to achieve what? What does your methodology help as for a transformation in the end for your clients?
Great question. So basically, what I've been able to understand is that every single problem with the mind, doesn't matter what label gets put on it, comes down to traumas and limiting beliefs, right?
Heard this before,
and basically cool. Rewiring your motivation. So kind of like the triangle that I started with was increasing your motivation, removing traumas, removing limiting beliefs. And so I've been able to fix stuff that's not supposed to be fixable. And I can't say cure because, I'm not in the medical industry. I don't deal with cures, but I deal with solving problems, right? So I've got clients with ADHD that are performing higher level than people without ADHD, like people with executive function. I've fixed all of those symptoms. I've fixed stuff that like multiple personalities. I've fixed several of those, like crazy stuff.
Wow, like that would be considered a mental disorder, correct?
Yeah, but I can't call it that because I'm not a medical professional.
No. I'm just saying, like in mainstream, that would be kind of considered that. So that's something that interesting that I haven't heard a lot of people that might fall into your bucket of mindset coaches, for lack of a better phrase, right? I think people throw a lot of motivation, performance, and a lot of those more transformational and not necessarily business related or analytical skills. Right. And I think it's such a overlooked correlation at when your mind is dialed in and your focus, or you've overcome limiting beliefs, how much that is an ROI factor in the business. It's just not like a simple, tangible one, like, hey, I get you 10 calls booked on your calendar. It leads to 50 grand, whatever. Right. So that's something, but it's really cool that you mentioned, that as one of the multiple examples you just give. Can we dive into that one first? Of the main topics we want to talk about today, is it cool if we dive into limiting beliefs first and you just talk about that a little on a general level, how you would to anybody first, really wanting to understand what are they categorized as? Give me some examples. And then how are some of the most prevalent ways that people can overcome these things?
Okay, great question. So Limiting beliefs. So my word that I call beliefs are different than anybody else on the planet of what they call beliefs, right? But I don't know what else to call it. So that's like the closest correlation I can draw. So what most people call beliefs are very deeply ingrained thoughts. And so you'll see, say, like Tony Robbins or some of these big sales guys, maybe like Eli Wild or Jordan Belfort, they use a process called NLP, neuro linguistic programming, to basically shift people's perception around different things, like changing the frame, changing how they view it. And that's on the thought level. So I go quite a bit deeper than that. And if I was to, put one sentence on what a belief is, it is the binary coding of the soul. And I know that sounds crazy. It's basically, we exist as an electrical imprint, and that imprint, it persists after death, right? You could call it a soul, you could call it whatever, right? But because it's electrical, it is coded in zeros and ones, right? So what I would do is I would go in and I would flip a 0 to a 1, or I would go in and flip a 1 to a 0, right? And when I do that, it changes their entire perception. Like half the time, like they can't even remember what I changed, because like the shift was so powerful. And like people, like when I get a really good shift in, like people, it looks like they got hit by a freight train. They're like, oh. It's like their whole world just got like turned upside down, and they're like sitting there like for 5 minutes, like what just happened, right? So if you've ever taken like drugs or hallucinogens, like that same high that you get is what I give without drugs, right? Just by shifting that electrical, signal in your mind, basically.
Awesome.
So what is a limiting belief? So now that we know what beliefs are, so in my definition, a limiting belief is anything that conflicts with your will. Right? So your will could be good or bad. It could be big or small or whatever, but anything that gets in the way of that is a limiting belief, and anything that supports that is an empowering belief, right? So basically, when I start working with someone, I'm just like, what are you trying to do? Like, what is your outcome? And then I'll align all of your beliefs to pursue that outcome single-mindedly without any question whatsoever. Like if you look at Marco, like the Renegade Circle went from a Facebook chat with like 2 or 3 people to, more than 100 members, like having like massive guest speakers on and all this stuff over the last year because of the work that I did on him. Right. So that would have not been possible like 2 years ago. So, awesome. So it's basically, that's like the effect you're talking about, the ROI, like how it translates in the mind. Like when you get rid of all limitations, you'll be shocked at what you can accomplish. And so then like the last part of your question was, how can you overcome that in your own life? So I've been able to figure out how to shift them directly, but it's a very esoteric thing because most people don't even know that the belief layer exists. According to me, like I said, like what I call beliefs are totally different. And so the best way to shift them on your own, you can't actually shift them on your own. Like I can't work on myself. I have to have my clients help me shift my own beliefs when I find them. But you can challenge your own worldview by external input, by reading books, by getting coaching, by different life experiences. And anytime those challenge your existing model of the world, then it's going to hit you in that same way. You're like, wow, like I believed that this thing my whole life, and now it's totally different, right? I believed water was wet and now it's dry, right? That's the kind of shift that can happen. But you need some kind of outside input. You need some kind of a sounding board to ping off of to see if your reality is actually reality.
That's crazy. One of the things you said there that I guess I disagree with, or maybe just never thought in that context until you said it. I guess I didn't, but I don't like to use that word. First off, I think that's part of limiting beliefs. There's certain things you say about yourself. I can't go get 5 new clients. I can't, like, I think that's one of the subtle ones that people just, they're already kind of knocking their knees out. But when you said you can't work on them on your own, I feel like I've worked on some limiting beliefs and overcome some on my own. But once you said it, I started to think more about it. And maybe a lot of times it had something to do with another interaction or something somebody said to me. So maybe that's what you're talking about there, but I've never thought of it that way.
That's exactly it. So the reason why you can't do it on your own is because we developed, you could say by evolution or by design, it doesn't matter. It's like a safeguard. So if you know about the basically 2 laws of robotics, which is like, number 1, you can't harm a human being by action or inaction, and 2, you can't rewrite your own code. And we function on like exactly that law. Like you can't see your own stuff, you can't change your own stuff, because if you try and do it yourself, your mind already knows 10 steps ahead of you what route you're going to change that, and it's doubting you the whole way. You're like, nah, you just invented that. Like, I don't believe you, right? So it's going to doubt that without that external input. And then as far as the word can't, it sometimes signifies a belief. It doesn't necessarily. Sometimes it's an observation, right? Like, I literally just I can't become an astronaut, right? Like that's just something I can't do, right? And so that's one possibility. And then there's also a thought, right, which develops from a belief, which maybe the belief is I'm not good enough, and therefore I can't do this, right?
Yeah,
So
I think that's it a lot of the time.
The I can't actually isn't the belief, and you have to find the underlying belief.
Good point.
Right. And then there are actually beliefs. So that is one word that I look for, but it's not like, okay, just because someone says they can't, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a belief. There's a lot of kind of discernment that goes into figuring out what actually is a belief versus, anything else.
Great. That's why I like having conversations like this with people like yourself that are kind of high level thinkers in your area of expertise, especially where it's not my area of expertise. I think I have a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. I think I have very little limiting beliefs in myself. So I think that's going to lead into another topic here very shortly in confidence. I think I've come a long way, and most people would probably define me as confident. Not just saying that about myself, which I take pride in saying that, because we all had our doubts at one point about, are people going to think I'm crazy for just talking about business, or are people going to watch if I go, like, there's all these things. And I started to realize, like, I'm worried about all these ifs, but the ifs might not happen. I need to go through and do the thing and see if those negative ramifications happen. Turns out people tend to like some of the things I have to say. People do tune in. People do open up their wallet to buy my stuff, right? So, no, I totally get that. And I think a lot of that kind of all plays together. Before we get into that, I want to get into another topic a little bit that you and I talked about. And one of the things I mentioned for a lot of the people that I know are in my Facebook group, and you guys watching on the replay in Facebook, you guys have heard me say this before, but I see a lot of the same names commenting on like the same people's posts. And you even mentioned some of them in your references. Like, there's Tony Robbins, there's Eli Wilds. Hey, get my newest script on how to the NLP tactic works for this, right? And everybody comments. And there's these great 2-step posts and all kinds of great information out there for free. I highly recommend getting what's applicable. The thing I don't see a lot of people doing is actually consuming and then implementing and executing in their own, and they just comment on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I'd like you to talk a little about the psychology that goes into that, as we talked about, and then we'll talk. I think that will kind of lead into the taking action and using your time wisely, and that comes down to focus in a sense too. But yeah, if you could dive into that a little.
Yeah. So in order for everyone to understand what's going on there, you have to understand the body's neurotransmitters. So what I was talking about a second ago was beliefs, which is actually much deeper than our biology. But what we're talking about here is actually what science acknowledges as, our fundamental self, which is our hormones and our neurotransmitters and our neuroscience and whatnot. So our body has a natural reward system based on dopamine. And anytime we do something like our mind likes, it releases dopamine and we keep doing the thing. And if we don't like it, it cuts off the dopamine and then we stop doing it. And what's happening with when people download lead magnets, right? So dopamine is released based off of a couple of beliefs, among other things, which is that belief in yourself and belief in the eventual outcome of what you're doing, right? So the reason why people need help to begin with, or a lead magnet or coaching or whatever, is because they don't believe in themselves, right? So they're looking for some kind of external validation, some kind of external information to help them believe in themselves to the point where they can actually take action. Now, once they actually get the lead magnet, then the other side of that equation gets tripped, which is basically that they believe that the lead magnet is now the answer to their problems. But what they don't understand is that lead magnets are never meant to be an answer. They are meant to sell you on the bigger answer, right? And my lead magnet is written the same way, right? It introduces all of this stuff and it sells a higher level thing, which it sounds, kind of taboo to talk about in our culture, because people don't like to feel like they're being sold, but that's the reality of it. So
Yeah.
the problem is that people think that the answer is in the lead magnet and they don't find the answer, and then they start doubting themselves again. And so they're seeking the next lead magnet because that's what gives them the dopamine high. Now, how you circumvent that? You have to understand that the answer is not in the lead magnet, it's in the person who gave you the lead magnet. So at some point, you have to decide, it doesn't matter who you go with. You have to say, okay, this is the person I'm going to learn from because I like their lead magnet or I like their content. And I'm going to commit 100% to following this person, right? Because they have the answer and they can coach me at a higher level and I'll get there, right? So the certainty in the outcome is not from the lead magnet, it's from the person who gave you the lead magnet. And once you make that switch, you'll realize that you're just mindlessly consuming lead magnets. And the reason why you're doing that is because you have no certainty behind who you're going to take advice from. So you need to stop looking at a lead magnet as the solution and look at it as like a menu, right? So you go to a restaurant, you look up the menu. Do I want the steak, the lobster, the chicken, the fish, whatever, right? Okay, each lead magnet is like a different entree, right? Like each person. And so you're like, okay, well, I like the lobster. I'm going to go with the lobster, right? So I'm actually going to like hire this coach. I'm going to work with them and they're going to solve my problems. But I just knew that the quality of their work was apparent in the lead magnet. So stop chasing the dopamine high, because that's a natural reward in your body for doing what you think you're doing correctly. And the problem is that you think that the lead magnet is the answer, and that's why you're getting that high, and that's why you're never taking action. That's why you keep looking for the next lead magnet.
And what about the people who would say, I don't comment on lead magnets because I don't believe in myself? It's actually just for the structure, right? Let's just say I'm commenting on a sales framework. I believe I'm great at sales, but I need a structure and need to know how to map it out so I can teach it to clients or sell it. Or I'm just looking for, how to increase. So I'm already good at sales, but if I could increase that by 10% more, then I would bring in an extra $4,000 a month.
Yeah. So believing in yourself doesn't mean believing in yourself blindly without questioning your skill set or, all of this stuff. So if you had absolute faith in you and your skill set, you wouldn't need a framework because you would already have a framework, right? You would be able to come up with your own framework. So it's not that you're doubting your character. It's not that you're doubting your effectiveness or your skills already, but there's something in yourself that you're doubting, that you're missing information, which is fine, right? We all have to learn. We all have to grow. That's not a problem. Like, it's actually a good thing. But the problem is when you keep looking and you never exit that search mode for the answer, and you just keep searching. You've got to exit the search mode and decide which road you're going to go down. Like, it doesn't matter who. Maybe they're a terrible coach. I don't know. But you deciding and taking action on a terrible coach is going to do more for you than downloading 5,000 lead magnets from 20,000 coaches.
I would agree. I think that's the most important thing you said that I would 100% agree with, is people that are doing this are consuming information from 10, 15 different, experts, for lack of a better phrase, with 10 or 15 different approaches and strategies. They're not all doing things the same. Maybe some of them are, but there should be one that totally stands out, like Jed said here, that you can commit to. And you probably are going to have to commit to more than just their free thing, no matter who that is, if you really want that problem solved. That's just the truth of it. But there are a lot of great lead magnets that get you, a partial result, or that get you over the hump you're dealing with now. And then when you have to get over that bigger hurdle, then you're probably going to go back to that person and say, hey man, you helped me with this last thing. Could you help me with this? Sure. That's a little different. And there's a $5,000, whatever. Right. So that's even part of it, right? Some are to help you get quick wins, which are great. The biggest thing I would say that I see a lot of people doing is the number one thing I just talked about is, getting them from 12 or 15, or just getting them from everywhere and everything you see. It's like that whole shiny object thing. Ooh, new script. Ooh, new framework. Oh, new sales process, right? Let me go see. But what I would say to anybody that has ever, in their entire time of being a digital marketer, whether it's been the last 30 days, whether it's been the last 10 years, right? Anybody that's ever commented or taken more than 15 or 20 lead magnets in their lifetime, free PDFs, free scripts, whatever it was, think to yourself, how many of those did you actually open, consume, and then take and implement into your business or your process? And if the answer is, say, over 50% of those, I'd be hard pressed to think anybody that's commented on over 20 lead magnets has consumed and implemented over 50% of those. But if it has, you're one of the few, and you're actually using them for the right purpose. But I think people just consume them and read them once, or sometimes you'll get it sent to you and you'll never even open it and view it, whether it's a video or a PDF. And I guarantee you, everybody watching that has commented or asked for over 10 or 15 or 20 of those in their life can relate to how many they've got that they've never actually implemented, digested, consumed, right? All of those things. So I think that's the biggest other problem with it. It's like you're wasting this time after this golden egg that you think is going to change your business. Then you get it and you don't even consume it or implement it.
Yep. If you were to kind of map out a flow chart of kind of the thought processes of what's going on, you start out, I don't have the answer, I need the answer. You see the lead magnet, oh, I finally get the answer. You get the dopamine rush, wow, I have the answer. And then you never look at it and you're like, okay, because I have the answer, I should be able to do the thing, even though you didn't learn anything. And then you start doing the thing and you realize you still suck. And you're like, okay, well, that lead magnet didn't work. Let me go try another lead magnet. Oh, now I have the answer, right? So you keep ping-ponging between I have the answer, I don't have the answer, I have the answer, and you're not actually changing or learning anything that would actually help you get out of that cycle. You're just like stuck in this like nonstop dopamine release. And that's kind of like the layman's terms of, shiny object syndrome is what a layman would call it, is basically you see something sparkling and you get the dopamine, you're like, oh, it's sparkly. And then you see something else sparkle and you're like, oh, let me go get that. And so you're just chasing, and you're never actually doing anything.
Yeah, it's like the dog that chases every squirrel it sees. One way, the next way, right? But never really any direction on what's going to get you to an end result. Right. Great point. And that kind of leads into another topic, which we've talked about and I think is really important. And that a lot of people, going back to limiting beliefs, hesitations, apprehensiveness to get started, is confidence. Maybe it's a confidence that nobody's going to pay me $3,000 to work with me. Maybe it's a confidence that I'm not better than anyone else. But what you have to remember, and what I'd always like to talk about before you dive into this, Jed, is no matter what you are teaching people, and that's your expertise, and I don't care if you just learned it 30 days ago, I guarantee you still know more than 80% of the population in that thing that has never researched it, has never bought a $100 course. It doesn't even matter what you've done. And all you really have to do to be able to help somebody, the first thing you have to do is be able to help them get up one level, right? If they're just launching and want to get into digital marketing or coaching or consulting, they're not going to pay $50,000 for Russell Brunson's Inner Circle right now. They don't even belong in that stratosphere. Like, that would make no sense whatsoever. They want to be able to get that next step to book 5 calls, to, get calls booked off their, whatever it is, that next little quick win. So that's one thing you have to remember in any market you're in. You just have to help that person get that next step and help them level up by one level. You don't have to help them level up 10 spots right off the bat. And I think that's one thing people take for granted. They're like, oh, I only know as much as the rest of the marketplace. No, I guarantee you know more than about 80% of the whole entire population out there. And the more people you work with, it's amazing how once you learn something, you learn it. But then when you start teaching it, how much other things you learn from that lesson. And that just blows your confidence out of the water too, especially when you're getting that positive feedback. Like Jed was talking about with some of his clients being in awe for 5 minutes and their jaws dropped, right? Or like they just had some type of almost psychedelic experience, like out of body experience. Like that stuff's crazy. And once you get those results and reactions from people, you're like, oh, damn, I am good at what I do, right? But talk a little about the confidence in people coming out of their shell, because I think that's a big reason why people don't go from aspiring online, service provider to never getting a client, right? I think there's some of that takes place.
Right. So there's actually a lot that goes into confidence. So once you guys look at kind of the document that I put together, I talk about the power equation. And when I talk about the power equation, I'm talking about electrical engineering, basically. So what I do in the mind is electrical engineering. It's software coding. It's not psychology. It's not psychiatry. It's not therapy. It's none of that stuff. Like, I literally go in and change the hard electrical circuits of your mind. So the power equation is power equals voltage squared divided by resistance, or you could also rewrite it as power equals amperage squared times resistance. And that's, I kind of spelled all that out in the document, so you don't have to remember that right now. But what that means is that there's several different variables in your mind as to what's actually going on, right? So when you have traumas and limiting beliefs, that's basically resistance. So if I remove a trauma, if I remove a limiting belief, that lowers your electrical mental resistance. And so then you also have decreasing amperage. Well, amperage is decreased by basically dopamine, right? Loving what you do, right? And that makes it addictive. So it requires less willpower to do it, right? And then you also have voltage, which that's a little bit more esoteric. So let's save that for another day. And then you have another aspect of it, which is hertz, which is frequency, which is kind of like back and forth with alternating current. And I get that I'm using very kind of scientific terms here, but it is very relevant. It's very important. So hertz, it does not actually apply to the power equation. It applies to frequency. And
Yep.
if you look up, say, Hawkins' vibrational chart, so another word for frequency is vibration. So the higher your vibration, the more you love something, the easier it's going to be to do, right? And the more you hate something, the harder it's going to be to do. And I know that makes sense for, like, when you say it, it's like, oh, yeah, that's common sense. But like,
Yeah.
it's literally the electrical circuits in your brain that's causing that reaction, right? So when you're talking about confidence, right? So maybe you have a trauma. Maybe you were abused when you were a child. Maybe you were yelled at. Maybe you got rejected. Okay, maybe there's a trauma that's causing that. That's one possibility. Maybe one of the reasons why you download so many lead magnets is you have a belief that I don't know enough, or I need to learn more. Those could be separate beliefs, and that could be driving you into this permanent consumption mode where you could know more than anybody on the planet, and you'll still feel like you're not learning enough, right? And then so that's kind of like the resistance side. And then you have like willpower, like you can actually rewire your circuit so you actually understand the outcome is possible, right? So when you don't have confidence, you don't believe in either yourself or you don't believe in the outcome. And kind of as a special treat to you, I won't dive into it too much on here, but in the document I go into the two beliefs that you need to actually hijack that circuit, so you actually generate immediate action, you generate immediate focus and immediate confidence because you're believing in things that are more believable.
Awesome.
So there's a lot that goes into it. So it's not a simple answer. It's like, I just can't say, okay, be confident, right? That doesn't work. So there's
definitely not a simple answer.
There's a lot of math that goes into what I'm actually doing in the mind.
Yep. No. That's great. And you mentioned people like always feeling like they need to learn more. And there's something to that. It is great to always be enhancing your skill set and learning more, but you can also learn more as you're teaching and helping people and
Right.
and evolve your skill set and your expertise while being an expert, right? I would consider myself an expert in organic outreach and offer creation. I was an expert at it a year ago, but now I could do it much better at a different level because I've done it for another year longer with 250 more people or whatever the numbers are, right? So, and I've also invested in other coaching to level up my skill set so I can then trickle that down to the people I teach. But I didn't need to do that to get people results, right? That helped me get further results or build up more programs and things as I evolve. And that's what we should always be doing. That's what a business does. It evolves. If you're stagnant in your skill set and your packages and your offers, eventually you're going to fall off the cliff and competition's going to, crush you and ascend. Everybody evolves in their life. As business owners, we do the same. So that's really cool. And something that kind of leads into the last real topic of conversation. And all of these, I know there's not simple answers to limiting beliefs and confidence. And that's why I like how you're breaking it down in a couple quick minutes rather than you could spend an hour on each topic, I'm sure, right? No doubt, and do a whole seminar on that. But you mentioned something really cool that I think really plays into the last thing I want to talk about. And that's how people can be more intentional in taking action that'll help them achieve whatever they're trying to do. What's their objective? Start a business, get more clients, deliver better results, whatever that objective is. And the number one thing I say when you kind of dip the scales into how much you're consuming versus how much you're putting out there is exactly that: consume versus create. Once I started to make a conscious effort in my mind in terms of intentional actions I took, one of those was the day I said, I'm going to create more than I consume. So I'm going to spend more time publishing, filming audience, filming stuff, working with clients, creating content, more time creating and putting value out to the market than I am reading books, taking courses, consuming, PDFs. And that was a big game changer for me, to be honest. So that's just the first tip I have, but I'd love to talk more and hear your take on how people really start to take, again, intentional actions that are going to help them get into their goal. And sure, it plays back into the first thing we talked about a little with focus, but go ahead, Jed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually kind of wanted to comment on the tail end of what you had said previously as well, which actually
Please.
ties perfectly in with this. So you had mentioned that you can consume and take action at the same time, and you can consume instead of taking action. And that really is kind of that difference between a limiting belief and an empowering belief. Same belief, right? Which is that I need to consume, right? I need to keep learning more. And basically the only thing that changes is what happens alongside that, right? So I can teach while I consume, or I can't teach until I finish consuming every bit of information that's ever been written in the history of mankind on it, right? So that's the kind of the difference. So how you actually kind of hijack yourself in the short term, like obviously you need to remove the limiting beliefs, you need to remove the traumas, all that stuff, which is the deeper work that I help people with. But in the short term, what you can do is actually change the meaning of the belief. So you can't change your own beliefs, but you can change what those beliefs mean, right? And this is actually kind of compliments of Eli Wild. I love Eli Wild. He does great stuff. So he's as good at sales as I am at mindset, but they're totally completely different things, and like it's just totally different areas of focus.
Yeah, I've worked with him on a couple of things, and we've done a couple and referred some people back and forth. I'm familiar. Good guy, 100%. I fully agree with you.
Yeah. So what he says, basically his definition of a belief is more what people would assign as a belief, which is that, okay, I can't record a video, and that means what, right? So he thinks that that's what a belief is, not my definition of a belief, but let's go with it, right? So I can't record a video, so that means I can't do video for my business. Or, so that's one meaning, or you can change the meaning, I can't do video, therefore I need to record more videos so I get better at it, so I get good, right? So it's like you have a belief, you can't do anything about the belief, I suck at video, right? That's either a belief observation or, a thought based on a deeper belief. But it's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, I can't do video? No, it just means that I'm going to suck at it till I don't suck at it. And the best way to do it is to practice, right? Or like, okay, I need to consume more information to learn. That either means I can't teach, or I know that I learn better by teaching. So I'm going to teach so I can actually accelerate my learning. Right. So it's like you have to just understand what your limitations are and what is the meaning that you're assigning to that, and seeing where that thought pattern is limiting you, even though the belief can't change, but you can change the thought pattern based on the belief.
Awesome. And yeah, something else you mentioned there, and I think a lot of people do. A lot of people are very self-critical too. I suck at video, telling themselves that when they watch and consume all kinds of sucky video all day, they just aren't as harsh about other people. Right? There's other people that make mistakes on video that might not be great. I think a lot of times people start to tell themselves that. I think they're just much more critical of themselves than they are others.
Well, there is an aspect of that, but a lot of times that actually does go down to limiting beliefs and traumas. So don't beat yourself up for anything, even for being critical of yourself. Like, so you have to stop being critical of yourself. And I know that flies in the face of every accountability coach and every mindset coach on the planet. They're like, oh, you've got to beat yourself up and do this thing. That's not how the subconscious operates. It feels like it's going to be punished if you do that. So what you have to do is actually understand and accept your limitations and be gentle with yourself, because there's probably a deeper issue. So if you believe that you suck at video, right, don't beat yourself up for sucking. Don't beat yourself up for believing that you suck. Just say, okay, well, maybe I do suck, but I still accept myself. It's okay, right? I'll learn, right? I sucked at tying shoes when I was 2 years old, but now look at me, right? I can tie anybody's shoes. So
100%.
It's like, don't beat yourself up for a belief, because it's not your fault that you have it. And if you do that, you're going to mess yourself up more than you're going to help.
And as a lot of people say, even if you get 1% better every time you do something, right? You do it enough and you're going to be 100% better in 100 days or whatever that number is.
Right.
So yeah, there's certainly a lot to be said there. Great stuff. So lastly, guys, I'm going to, well, before I kind of wrap it up, JP or Steven, you two are both on the live Zoom. Would anybody want to take a moment and unmute and just, do you have any questions for Jedediah, or any takeaways from this live would be great. Go ahead, Stephen.
No questions, man. That, you know, that was awesome though. And you know, I practice a lot of the same things just because with the business I'm in, you know, I'm also a day trader and I own a business. And to become a profitable day trader, you can't beat yourself up with negativity and those limiting beliefs that, you know, you can't do it, you can't do it. But you have to reinforce a positive outcome by, you know, thinking positively, right? And educating yourself. And I think you can apply that not only to that, but, you know, pretty much every aspect in your life, because like what he said earlier in the call, we are pretty much beings of energy, right? We're here physically, we create physical interactions, but it's stored as energy, you know? So I feel like the more positive energy you put out, the more positive energy you get back. So well done, man. That was a freaking really awesome webinar.
Thanks. Good takeaways. Good takeaways. JP, if you're there, do you have any thoughts or takeaways?
Hey guys, thanks for the invite to speak. I appreciate it. Jedediah, awesome talk. This is my first time meeting you via the Zoom, via Raymond's room here. But I gotta tell you, I found myself nodding my head in agreement more often than not. So congratulations to you. Thanks for sharing awesome shares and awesome insights. The only thing I have to say, just to kind of dovetail this and kind of tail end it just a little bit, is that for the most part, and you know, I say this as somebody who's been a professional for over 20 years in the industry, for the most part, aside from major sort of technological or structural or systemic issues with the business, I want to say 99% of what I've experienced in the market is either a leader or an owner or an entrepreneur who has some sort of mental, let's just say, block, right? Let's just, for better or worse, I don't want to put too much label on it, whether it's belief system, this, that, trauma, whatever. Let's just say some sort of a block. In my background, I've referred to them as energetic blocks, but that's a separate sort of, you know, discipline, if you will. That all being said, I want to thank you guys. I'm going to let you guys go. You guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, JP. I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, I wanted to hear from both those guys. And JP has got a very, very stealthy background in acumen. I love hearing his takeaways, because a lot of times he'll see a different perception or different, you know, point of view that I don't. Stephen actually mentioned one there that I didn't bring up. And I think all that, you know, thank you for the feedback, guys, and the takeaways there. And then lastly, kind of before we round it out, I'm just going to, one last time, Jed has given us this document that he put together just for the people watching this particular live. So whether you're here in the Zoom, you're watching on the Facebook Live or replay, or you're seeing this on the YouTube post that's coming up very soon, just comment focus below and I'll make sure to get you this document. As Jed had mentioned, if I was to scroll down, and that's what I'm kind of teasing and leaving it to you guys to, you know, comment if you'd like that. But the last kind of segment here was the 2 core beliefs you have to start to be able to understand how to take intentional actions and move forward. So I want you guys to get that, but I don't want you to just have it on the screen for 30 seconds. I want you to actually get it and read it and implement it, right? That's what we're talking about all this time. If you're going to comment on it, great, please do so. If you're going to read it and you know, consume it and implement it. If anybody wants to get a hold of Jed within the posts and the replay I have, I'm going to have the link to the lead magnet document for anybody that wants it. I'll have the link to his Facebook profile so you guys can connect directly and you can find out more about what he does, or if you want, you know, any more information about his content or how to work with him. I'll make sure to put all the pertinent information wherever this is posted. Jed, again, thanks for coming on. This was fascinating. I enjoyed the back and forth there. And any last takeaways from you here, buddy?
Yeah, so actually Stephen had a great point about the positive mindset. So basically your mind is motivated by moving towards pleasure and moving away from pain. Like that's all of human psychology in a nutshell. And so the mistake that most people make is that they're motivated by external stuff, and then when they don't reach that, they beat themselves up. So they cause their own pain, right? So you have to kind of flip that. So it's like you look at the beneficial outcome, right? And then the negative outcome is not you doing that to yourself. It's almost like, you know, cost of an action or consequence of like, okay, if I don't do this thing, then it happens, but it's not doing it to yourself, so you don't feel punished. So that's a great point, Stephen. And then JP, you mentioned the kind of spiritual stuff. I actually do go deep, very deep down the rabbit hole. Like I've done full on exorcisms of demonic entities. Like
That's
you wouldn't
crazy.
believe the stuff that I've had to deal with. But so
That's a whole nother
what we
episode
talked
in
about.
itself.
Say what?
That's a whole nother episode in itself.
It is. Yeah. So yeah, I know what you mean, and I agree with you. What we were going over today was just like more of like the science, kind of like the mindset side of stuff. So great input there. And then the last thing I'll say to everybody is that I do not usually respond to just random friend requests. And if someone just sends me, hey, how are you? How's the weather? I will not respond, but I do look at every single message. So just reference something intelligent like, hey, I saw Raymond's podcast, or I saw the focus document or something. So I know that you're a human being and not like a spammer or scammer or a robot or something. And then I'll definitely connect with you. But if you're doing one of those things, just send me a friend request and you never hear from me. That's probably the issue, because like I have like 500 friend requests and I'm very selective about who
Well, if they click your document, they'll see the way to get right in touch with you and
Right.
and reach out to you. But 100%, I fully agree. And if anybody in this group is reaching out to people saying, hey, how are you? How's the weather? You haven't gone through the most generic PDOCS training, and get started on that first, because you got other problems to worry about. All right. Thanks again, buddy. We'll be in touch soon. And thank you for your time today. It was great.
All right. Appreciate you.
All right. Bye-bye.